Hey Nathan, how you doing? Good to see that everything's well, obviously slightly more positive. I've just read through this little bit. Obviously, sorry to hear about your nan. That's obviously horrible. No one likes that. But obviously, hopefully nothing too major happened in terms of how it all happened. Hopefully she went away peacefully. So yeah, sorry about that. But it's good that you've had more positive photography week, which is good. So learned a lot about on my shoots the last 2 weeks in the gym and the waterfall with the model. It's really good that you've been getting out. I often have found that when I've been a bit stressed or a bit kind of like down about things, getting out there and trying to do something different, it completely takes your mind away from it, gets you to concentrate on the thing that you enjoy doing, and often it takes you back to having to deal with the rest of it with a bit more of a positive mindset. So definitely think it's worthwhile doing when you can. Um, but yeah, so hopefully, obviously, her funeral would have passed by now. So obviously, hopefully, that's all kind of laid to rest, if without sounding like a pun or anything like that. But yes, hopefully, that obviously you can move on from that as soon as you can. I've also had lost a lot of shifts at work, so now I have stress with money. So yes, I need to pull my finger out and get more paid photography jobs. That's a very positive way of looking at it, mate. It's definitely worth getting yourself out there. You know you've got a skill, and you're growing something, so just go and put it all out there. Don't just instantly go searching for like the money though. Search for more work and you'll probably find more money will come that way. In terms of like, don't just oversell things. Just obviously keep putting out content that shows obviously what you're doing, reaching out to people, and just kind of networking as much as you can. If you've got the time to do it, one of the most positive ways you can use your time is to actually go and invest it into yourself. I know that obviously financially, if you're wanting to do things and make things happen, then you obviously need to be at the forefront of doing those things. So if you can get any more work in and start getting some extra cash in your pocket, then hopefully that will sort a lot of things out for yourself. The ex-wife is moving out of my place next week, and she'll take one of our dogs, which is sad to split them up. Sounds like you're having a bit of a tough time with all these things, buddy. But hopefully, hopefully you can start using these things to move forward and actually be positive about things. The home internet has been down for almost a month, so it hasn't helped me getting photos out to clients. Will hopefully fix by Monday. Sometimes that's where you just have to drag yourself down to a coffee shop, or just I don't know. I can tether to my phone or something like that. But yeah, just obviously getting down somewhere and just sitting there and doing like an hour or two of like solid work is often like a really good way of just kind of getting a few things off your plate, getting them done, and then moving forward. With the photos you've uploaded, what did you like most about them? The first two were using flash, which I think gave nice directional light. Lucky I had a friend lighting assistant to help with these ones. I did manage to use a 60-inch shoot-through umbrella as a diffuser for some of the shots with a light stand over the model, while the assistant used a reflector to bounce some light back and use the softbox. Let's see which ones these are. Well, that's nice. I like that. Okay, I was just gonna. I haven't obviously flicked through these yet, so let me just see. The first two were using flash, so I'm guessing is that these ones? Yeah, that looks more like flash related. So yeah, I think like the one thing I noticed with the one that you put on Instagram, I think obviously you've got the flash nice and high. If you can get the flash above the model, it often gives a very flattering light. You can see like the highlights on here and then the shadows. So obviously like you've got a really nice angle there. This angle often works really well when you get the model to twist their body over towards you a bit more, so that then you elongate the waist and then obviously like pull their abs out a bit more. Obviously it's easy to scrunch back into this position, but she can still keep her head there but rotate her waist over a little bit more so that you then stretch this part of the body out. But overall, like, it's really nice lighting. You've got like a kind of, it's nice to have the waterfall in the background. Maybe it could have looked, if you're being like panicky about a thing, or not panicky, but like trying to improve them, maybe if you could have got down any lower to then shoot at like level with her, so then she's a little bit higher, would have taken her head away from this rock a little bit more, would have put it more up here. Um, but generally, like the lighting on it looks really nice. Possibly a touch, a little bit bright. You could probably pull the highlights down a little bit, and it might make it merge a little bit better. Like there's a fine line between it being bright and then it being a little bit too much. I'd say just maybe tone it down a tiny bit, but overall I really like that. This is a nice image as well. I think just obviously like with the flash, try and like you can see here, this is often a sign when your flash is too powerful or like a little bit too close to the subject or the aperture isn't right. if you look here, the lighting's perfect. That's exactly how you want it. Up here, it's a little bit too bright. So what I try and do when I shoot my images is I look at the face and see how that looks, and then try and look at the rest of the body. If I know that the light on the lower half of the body looks better, I then need to move my model to obviously get the light positioned on her face a little bit better, or moved away or whatever like that. Just see how you can twist it and change it to then make it look so that then you get a little bit. I mean, as I say, with this type of image, you've got such a nice spread of light, and obviously there was some ambient light coming into this scene because obviously it's lit up down here as well. So yeah, maybe just pull the highlights a little bit back in the face, and I think that's a lot better. Like, it then makes the body merge together really well, and it makes it a nicer looking image. But yeah, I really like those, pal. So this is more the second two images with natural light on a different location in the waterfalls in the afternoon, so the sun was easier to control. I've been trying to improve my dodge and burn on all my images after seeing your tips. So I think this actually works quite well. I think you could probably, like, once again, as you look over the image, you look at areas like this where it's obviously darker, and then you've got areas of shade here, so obviously the light's coming down. What is good to do is then, like, where the light's coming from, you can see where it's coming from. Obviously it's bright here, it's bright on her face, it's coming across this way. Try and add shadows in those places, so like here, even a little bit more on the arm here, underneath this bit, all these bits that you make them pop, and especially with tattoos, because they always look wicked. They're the things that will really kind of give you that kind of real pop to everything, to then make it look really like contrasty. And they're often the images that really catch people's eyes. So it's always about controlling the highlights. So I'd always look for the brightest bit on the body, so like maybe here or here, and then see what the flash says, or see what there's metering to that. And then as you move it across, you know that you're going to be controlling these areas of the highlights. So then you can always ramp everything up again to bring it up brighter if you're controlling those highlights. You don't want those highlights to blow out too much like here. Occasionally it does happen, but what you're obviously, if you close your eyes and then open it up, the brightest bit of the image is kind of here and up on her cheek. So maybe just toning it down slightly on these two areas will just give it a nice overall look, but also like add a bit more contrast into like some of these spots. And you've got such a cool image there, and I really like that. So definitely, mate, your lighting control on these things is really good. It's definitely a massive improvement from the start. So that's what we're aiming for. Once again, this is lovely. This is nice. I often think with these angles that you need to be parallel with the model, so you need to be completely side on. When they're doing this, you get a bit too much kind of up the nostril. I always try and go for an angle where I'm like completely parallel to them, and then obviously them leaning back onto the rock, or leaning back how they're doing it. She could have, for example, put her head here and then put the rest of her body down there and like leant back on that, depending on how slippery this rock is. But I mean, you've got such an amazing location here to be able to use. Like, it's really worthwhile to like explore more with that. So like, I often think, as I say, one thing that you lose from having it at a slightly 45-degree angle compared to when you're like completely flat on is that you would have seen like the kind of arch in her back, like her chest down to her stomach, and then like pushing her legs up as well. You get a lot more curves with like when you're side on. Whereas if you go at 45-degree angle, you can see it kind of flattens the model off a little bit. So especially when you've got a shot like this where you can see a lot more of her curves, the more you get her side on, you can see here, look, you can see more of the shape of her like this. So if you'd even like accentuate it even more and get her to sit like parallel, so she's sitting straight to you, or like away from you, then you show off all of her key body parts, which then obviously make her figure and everything stand out. And that's when you suddenly go, oh right, I see what you mean. I can get more of that kind of shape to the body, curves of her, and girls want to show off their curves. Like that's the one thing they're like super proud of. So you want to be able to accentuate those, not so much up the nose and just a bit more side on, and that would have been like an absolute pucker image. So they're all great images, mate, and I think the lighting's good on it. It's one of those things. 1 week the lighting, next week it's the posing, but then once you've done this for 3-6 months, you suddenly go, wow, look at the difference in what I was producing before to now. So that's what I would say is definitely worth. Just kind of keep tweaking on those things, but mate, this is honestly so much better than like the first few check-ins. So let's just keep this moving that way. It was great to do to shoot with a model and knows what she's doing and had a lot of experience. Obviously, she's clearly very comfortable and confident. use that more, you know, and ask her when you're shooting them, just go, you know, what do you think, how can I get the best out of you? And she's going to go, oh, actually, she'll look at it more, and then she'll go, actually, if I pull my chest up here, or like arch my back more, or whatever like that, that would work really well. Maybe even having her hair all the way back would have actually worked quite nice as like a kind of, you know, that's just a really nice, like, as if she's just come out of the water type of look. In some of them, maybe not the ones shown. I think I underexposed the background a bit too much when using flash, so my ISO could have been a little higher to blend in the flash to make it look more natural. With the dynamic range of the Sony, I did manage to bring back the background a lot though, and my model had a lot of details. You can probably still raise a lot of the shadows in all of that lot, and bring back a lot more details. So what you can do here is you can obviously like let me just see if I can. My laptop seems to be going super slow today, which is obviously really helpful. Obviously, this is going to be a raw. This isn't obviously going to be a raw image, but let's just see if we can do anything in here. So obviously, you can see there's a lot of detail in the darks here, and not so much in the highlights. So with this here, you obviously overall reduce the highlights on the model. Now sometimes it's a case of doing 2 layers of the image, so then you separate the model from the background. So now you could ramp a whole lot of light back into that lot. So then obviously like you've pulled a lot more light out of her. Now she looks obviously dreadful in this. Using a masking tool, so you have your brush on opacity 100, flow on 100. Using the default button, you select the white and black. Obviously you want to go black, and then you just paint the model out of that, so then she comes back into the exposure correctly, and you'll see that you suddenly get, obviously this is going to be very rough, and I'm going to dodge around it like I would do if you were doing it like completely properly, but you see now like the model's actually like everything looks the same type of exposure. But then you can always tweak around with that. Now you've cropped her out, all you're doing is exposing the background, so you can bring that up a little bit more, and then you might go, you might say, look, obviously like that now, like all the brightness looks exactly the same over the whole image instead of too much different. But then obviously if you wanted to then do a separate one, so you could then duplicate that and then invert it. Now you've obviously put the lighting effect onto your model. So this is where you pull everything back out, and then depending on what you want to do, you can then obviously adjust the lightness in here. Obviously like I've done a very rough like kind of outline with it, but you can see the difference now by all you're doing is just adjusting the lightness on the model there, so that if you really wanted to bring her down a little bit to make her a bit more contrasty, there you go. And then by having those 2 layers there, you can see that you've just changed the kind of overall look and vibe of the image, and it then everything's lit correctly and it looks like a very natural image. Obviously if I cut around it properly you'd get more of the vibe of it, but as you can see, like that's a way you can do it. I do like to make my model stand out against the background, but I think when you've got a background something like this, you kind of want to show that off, and the more like perfect the whole exposure looks, the better it looks. Whereas if you're shooting, for example, something like this, obviously like she's quite dark in the image and the rest of it is quite bright, so I've lifted her up a bit. But what I've tried to do with this is actually make it so that you focus on her face and look at her face. I haven't actually adjusted this image, this is how it looks in camera, but you could obviously reduce the highlights to then dampen this lot down and then just pick it out a little bit more on her face and on her body. But there's subtle elements like this and here like that just pop, and you get that really nice like kind of edge light look to them. It's all about kind of making the image blur well, like mend well together, so that when you actually shoot them, you let's just see, sorry, like with this, like you get a very evenly looking lit image, and then all you're ever doing is just adjusting it to make that pop. I mean, like I haven't edited that, that's just straight out of camera, but what we're trying to do here is control these elements of the image, and then obviously we'll just adjust inside of here to then make it look evenly lit but making her stand out. So by doing the same thing with your image up here, as you can see, like the contrast is like really popping with this, but you've obviously got a lot of the colour in the background. And the other side of this is that if you've you know, if you're using these kind of like filters, I think you can do this. You can. No, that didn't work. You can. I'm trying to remember how you do it now. I haven't done it for a while. But basically, you can copy the mask onto like a different layer. There is a way of doing this properly. I can't remember, but the you can then adjust, like, obviously you've got so much colour in the background of all of this lot, especially with her tattoos, like it really works well to make them all pop. Obviously when you draw it all back, you can see like it's obviously looking a bit flatter. You want to pop some of these colours and really make them all stand out. That's what makes like a really eye-catching image. That, I mean, I say like this is a very rough edit, like don't go taking on, I just want you to take a few notes from it, that you can make all of this pop a lot more compared to that. I know that you've obviously tried to focus the light on the model, but you can see the difference there in like actually like making her blend well together, and then just adding a little bit more dodge and burn, like just a tiny bit more, not too much more, but that then looks like a lot better image. Like you've got a lot more like consistency through the lighting compared to this where it's just light in one spot. But you can still do a lot more with that, mate. Like you can still pull a lot more out. It's just kind of practice and trial and error. But yeah, it's, honestly, mate, these images are really good. And for someone who's had a bit of a tough week, like they're really strong. Like, so definitely like be confident with what you've done. There's a lot more sunspots on some of the image I was trying to create, so I got my assistant to use the diffuser 5-in-1, but it wasn't large enough to cover the whole body. What you generally tend to have to do with that is get them to stand back and hold it right up high, and then just try and get as big an area filled as possible. It is really hard, but then sometimes that's to do with the time of day that you go there. Like sometimes it's actually worth going there, like checking out the times that you can go there to go and get the best lighting. If you're trying to use it during the middle of the day, you're always trying to control everything. Whereas obviously if you do it early in the morning, later at night, you get the softer light and it looks that way naturally, and then you can tweak it to then really get more out of it. I have a fitness shoot booked in for this Sunday with the same girl as in the recent pictures in this check-in. I also have a couple shoot Sunday afternoon on the beach, as well as photos with their dog. Cool. Next week or the week after, I have a family shoot with the boss's daughter, her husband and two kids, 1-year-old, two 1-year-olds, and the other 10-week-old. This would be a paid job, 200 to 250 kronor. Mate, perfect. That's what we want. So the more things you can reach out to like this, say like trying to really like hone in on, like if you're going in that, like, you know, 4 of those a month, that's $1,000. I'm sure that'll go pretty far. And to say like the fitness shoots, and I mean all these images are doing really well. Like for me, I really like them. I think it is just a case of trying to control those highlights, so you're always exposed for the height, like the brightest bit, just so that then you can really control what you're doing with it. But you're definitely like honing in on these skills. It's not me having a dig at you. It's just like we're trying to get these to be the point where you're like, yes, this is brilliant. Um, what was your biggest challenge? Doing a fitness with one light stand when using 2 flashes. I now have a C stand after your recommendation, but I didn't realise it didn't come with a baby pin, so I had to order. No, that's a bit of a pain in the ass when they do things like that, but that's just the way things go. How many clients have you reached out to? Not enough, as I've been dealing with my nan's funeral. Mate, that just happens, so don't bog yourself down about it. Like, just use it to then spur yourself back on. What's your goals for next week? Trying to get more paying clients. Pretty much my life. But yeah, just keep reaching out to people, keep pushing. As I say, like use your Instagram to like local people, find local people in the area. Keep reaching out to them. Say, look, hey, I'm a photographer. Let me know if you want to do a shoot. I can let you know my rates and everything like that. You may find 1 or 2 of those come off. Try and get people like her to then like recommend you, share it on her stories, and say, look, hey, shot with Nathan recently. He's doing some really good rates on like photo shoots. Even if you're getting $100, $200 to go and shoot some stuff like this, it's all those things that suddenly build up. And as I said, you know, if you get 4 of those family shoots a week and maybe 10 fitness shoots a week, 4 of those a month and 10 fitness shoots a week at $150, $200, whatever, you're making fairly good sum of money, and you know you're going to be a happy man. You're doing what you love, so just get your head back up, mate. I know, like I say, like obviously family's passing away. Like when my granddad passed away, he was the whole reason why I pushed my photography, because I realised that I needed to do something more constructive with my life than what I was doing, and so far it's working out really well. So just get out there, keep shooting, keep doing stuff. I hope to say the funeral went well and everything like that. But yeah, let's keep this kind of progressive movement going forward. So there's been a real progression with you over the last couple of weeks, so we really need to kind of keep that focus in your mind, and we'll get to where you want to get to. Have a good week, mate, and I will speak to you later on. Stop high. Right. Camtasia.